Okay, so yesterday was, oh dear, the finals of the African Cup of Nations took place. There was a lot of build-up to this, and I think a lot of West Africans
versus North Africa, and you know whose side I'm on.
Well, I know, but even Central Africa and I think Southern Africa, I think a lot of them were rooting for Senegal, while of course some Northern Africans will, of course, would have been rooting for Morocco, but not all of them, because you know, when Egypt is involved, you don't know, it's doubtful if Egypt will be rooting for Morocco. Maybe Algeria, doubtful if Algeria will be rooting for Morocco. Those countries have a funny relationship with football when they play, especially, or for instance, when Egypt plays Algeria, you saw the fiery contest.
Oh, and then, yes. I mean, it's like when Ghana plays Nigeria. Come on.
Well, that's different, though. And that's a friendly kind of rivalry. But those chaps up north, oh, my God, you're wondering, is there more to this than football? Isn't it the same football that we're all watching? I thought there's supposed to be spirit of sportsmanship.
Oh, well.
But we don't tend to see all of that. But yesterday, the kind of build-up we saw, in fact, Temitayo joins us this morning in the last night. He's a sports journalist right there. He witnessed the tournament itself. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program today. Well, yes, a number of people would have seen what transpired from a distance, but you being there, what kind of narratives was going on within the Moroccans, maybe not even just before, but afterwards, after all of that? Because the images that were circulating was that of unsportsmanly behavior from either the Moroccan players, their ball boys, or the fans. What's going on?
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having me on. I think yesterday was one of the most interesting games that I've sort of been a part of directly. Morocco came into the tournament as one of the favourites, and I think, in all honesty, they used everything in their power to try and win the tournament. And that was from using whistles and catcalling in the stadium from the fans, to the ball boys taking some of the towels from the goalkeepers, to even some of the players preventing the goalkeepers from getting their towels, which I think spoiled what was honestly quite an amazing tournament. I think Morocco, as the host nation, were exceptional with regards to the infrastructure and how they put a tournament on in Africa to put Africa on the map in terms of football. But I think it was definitely soured by some of the behaviour within the stadium, and also, I guess, some of the decision-making by the officials who, you know, some might say were influenced heavily by the crowds.
Well, this is where we are now. In spite of it all, Senegal eventually took the trophy. And I mean, I do not know whose side you were on. My guess is that you were not neutral in all of this, and that you certainly were hoping, because I can see you proudly wearing the green, white, green. And I'm sure that you were hoping that someone would take revenge on our behalf. But tell me, what was it like in the stadium? Because I do know that when you're playing against a home team at the finals, that can certainly be tough for people who come to support the other side. What was it like?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, like you said, I think I entered the game as a neutral, being from Nigeria. But being inside the stadium is one of the most surreal experiences I've ever had. I watched the semi-final and the final, and with regards to how the fans are, they are very passionate, very emotive, and they supported their team from the first minute up until the end of the extra time. The atmosphere is, honestly, it's something that if you're not there, you can't actually understand it. It's one of those things that you don't necessarily get from TV, where it's so loud, you cannot hear yourself think when your team have the ball. So I think Senegal were unbelievable in terms of how they handled the pressure. I would have liked Nigeria to have sort of been able to perform similarly in terms of like sort of just slowing the tempo down and controlling the game and keeping possession. But Senegal were well worth their money. They defended well, they attacked in droves, and they kept control of the midfield. And I think whenever the crowd were trying to get into the game, they were able to slow the tempo down to maintain possession. But you have to give credit to Morocco. They have been preparing for a tournament like this for the last 20 years. And you can tell that like they were ready to support their team. They were very unfortunate. But yeah, I can say that I am glad that Senegal won. only because I think some of the decision making by some of the officials weren't necessarily the best. I think, as I'm sure you all saw, the penalty decision in the last minute was something of a travesty, in my opinion. Some may disagree, which obviously led to the Senegalese players coming off the pitch temporarily. But I think ultimately, I would say the best team won. And yeah, but I think for African football and for football in general, it was an unbelievable spectacle. So yeah.
So tell us about that minute, that penalty that was awarded in the 94th minute. Tell us about it. What was the mood in the stadium when that penalty was awarded? I mean, there are certainly people who did feel that, no, that was outright, as you said, travesty. But what was the mood? Were people quiet? Were they wondering what was going to happen, especially when the Senegalese decided to walk out?
So, I mean, yeah, it was a raucous atmosphere for the entire game itself, but I think just before the penalty was awarded, Senegal had a goal chalked off for an innocuous foul, I would say, which the referee didn't actually go to VAR to check, and I think that upset the Senegalese players. So to award a penalty for what I would consider a soft pull in the last minute, definitely enraged the Senegalese players. I think the Moroccan fans were hoping that the penalty was given, and the celebrations were chaotic as soon as the penalty was given. And the fact that it took about 6-7 minutes for the VAR to be checked made the stadium even more tense. And as soon as the penalty was given, the Senegalese players said, we're not having this, we're not accepting this. And credit to them, they were able to put pressure on the Moroccan players in terms of coming off the pitch, completely destabilizing the atmosphere of the stadium. There were fights breaking out. Unfortunately, people were very angry in the stadium from both sections of supporters until ultimately the players came back on to a rouse of boos and catcalling. But yeah, no, as you can imagine, in a game with such high stakes, to concede a penalty with maybe a minute to go in extra time, a dubious penalty at that would have led to a chaotic response, I would say. And yeah, that's exactly what we got. I don't know what we could see from the television, but yeah, in the stadium, it was like a jungle out there, honestly, up until Diaz took and missed the penalty.
Okay, I was going to ask you, what it was like after the match. It's one thing to be talking about the mood in the stadium, but after, sometimes you hear talks of violence or, disgruntled fans who, can go on rampage. But clearly, we didn't hear anything of the sort happening in Morocco. So I think it still speaks to the comportment of the players. But I would like to ask what lessons you think that the whole of Africa in general can learn from this tournament and how they can constantly and consistently improve in terms of how Morocco has hosted.
Yeah, you're right. Just to touch on what you said, yeah, there was no talks there was no rioting or anything crazy after the game. The Moroccan fans, honestly, throughout the tournament, apart from when they're in the stadium, were exceptional. They are some of the kindest people that I've met, from obviously coming from London. But yeah, they were very gracious in defeat. I think when they beat Nigeria as well, very gracious in their win. And I think yesterday a lot of them would say that the penalty was a dubious penalty. So they were very gracious and they were very hospitable the entire way through. And I think one thing that Africa can learn in general is in terms of infrastructure. Like I said, Morocco have been planning for this AFCON tournament for the last decade, and which is why they've obviously also been granted the 2030 World Cup as joint hosts. The infrastructure, 10 out of 10. The fan zones, the level of pitches, and I would say even the officiating for the most part. Of course, with the host nation, some could say that they had some favourable decisions go their way, but I think the level of officiating was exceptional. Like I said, the pitches contributed to the AFCON tournament having the most amount of goals in its history. I think we had 121 goals, smashing the record, which was set in 2019. So I think when you give yourselves an opportunity to have, an even playing field, quality surfaces, and the infrastructure around it, then you give the players who come from the overseas, some of the best players in the world, who want to put on a show for Africa, an opportunity to put on that show. So I think what other countries can learn, and I'm hoping in the next 18 months, go into Tanzania, Uganda, and Kenya for the next AFCON. Just prepare, have quality pitches, give the players, the access to, nice training facilities, hotels, buses, things that should just come readily, things that, you know, players are used to having when they're playing for their club sides, and engage the fans. Honestly, the fans made Morocco such a special place. There was fan zones in all different cities, and all the players understood, you know, the passion that the fans were showing. So engage the fans, give them something to cheer about, and honestly, like, you have an amazing AFCON. I think Morocco did really well putting on this tournament, and it definitely is a highlight for African football.
Yeah, I mean, in addition to that, the way it came across to a lot of people watching is that the officials, perhaps CAF, wanted the host nation to lift the trophy. And then Senegal showed African teams how to play North African sides if you really want to win. Maybe right from the build-up up onto the match itself. But it's a conversation we can keep on going on having. But we do thank you for your time this morning.
No problem, thank you. Have a lovely day.
All right. Well, back in a moment. Don't go away.